Hello everybody, it's me, the Anonymous Mystery, your local nocturnal detective. And Mona, my trusty crime-finding dog. Tonight we're going to continue playing Rose-Colored Cover by Phony Roni. With everything having been outlined, let's dig right in. Gonna go ahead, skip this part. We're gonna assess the situation. It was best to stay calm right now and figure out what happened. You shifted your shoulders and elbows to prop yourself up, but it proved to be pretty difficult with your hands behind your back. After a moment of struggle, you used all the strength in your abs to sit up properly. Being left alone in a dark, silent room gave you some space to be alone with your thoughts at the very least. There were no clues in this room as to where you were, so you focused on how you got here instead. You must have been approached from behind and hit with something that knocked you out. The bruise you felt forming on your head was physical proof of that. What else did you know for certain? Pretty much nothing. This was unfamiliar territory, and you were without any resources to call for help. Creak, creak, creak. The floorboards above you were so loud you could hear the footsteps from all the way in the basement. Somebody was up there, undoubtedly the person responsible for taking you captive. There were a few moments of alarm that were brought to an end when the footsteps got louder. Your eyes were glued to the ceiling above as they moved to the left, then forward towards the rickety old stairs. Your heart stopped as the sound of a lock clicking hit your ears, then the scrape of old metal as the doorknob turned. The blood in your veins ran cold and you felt as though time slowed in anticipation of what was to come. Your kidnapper was coming downstairs, and you were about to see their face for the first and possibly last time. Then came the sound of shoes on top the stairs. Every step brought your inevitable fate closer and closer, staring helplessly into the darkness as they descended. The sound came to a halt, and then the whole room was bathed in pink. You flinched and squinted your eyes from the drastic change in lighting. You had expected to see a burly man dressed in all black, maybe even a scary mob boss who was about to ask your family for ransom money. What you hadn't expected was for a pair of garish yellow heels to be in front of your face. Your eyes slowly trailed upwards past a pair of freshly waxed legs and a bright pink skirt. There before you was a young woman with a pale bow and styled blue hair. She was looking down at you as if you were a small mouse she had found scampering around in her basement rather than a tied-up human being. As you stared at each other in silence, her expression gradually relaxed into a sickeningly sweet grin. Then she spoke.
Oh, you're much cuter from the front.
Those same yellow heels were then used against you, kicking your stomach. She kept her foot rested there, the heel digging down into your soft skin.
It's a real shame you have to die.
A stare. Let me go. Explain your situation. Ask Gabriella about herself. Is he worth it? You couldn't think of any other way to dissuade her. It was a desperate attempt to make her reconsider.
Maybe not to you, but he is to me. I'm afraid this is the end of the road for you.
Her grip on the knife adjusted, and the look in her eyes was chilling. You squeezed your eyes shut, feeling terrified tears threaten to spill over. The metal touched your neck again. The pain lasted only a second before nothing. Ending 1 of 5, game over. Thanks for playing. Alright, this time, dart, skip, assess the situation, skip, Try to fight? You thrashed your body as aggressively as possible and tried your hardest to get away. You didn't expect to get far with your limbs bound, but it was the intention that mattered. It was just to prove a point.
Oh, well, that's no fun.
She knelt down in front of you and reached for you, causing you to flinch back. No amount of self-preservation could avoid her in this situation, though. Her right hand pressed against your temple to keep your head steady, while her left grabbed the edge of the tape. It was yanked off your lips in a flash, making your skin buzz and tingle with pain. Ow!
There we go. I hate talking to myself.
She didn't seem to care how it irritated you. Her head tilted to the side, and the feeling of dread took over.
It's about high time I introduced myself, yeah? My name is Gabriella. Not that it'll matter to you anyway. You won't be alive to remember it.
She then giggled and poked your nose.
And you have been a little thorn in my side as of late. Jake hasn't had any time for me since you entered the picture. I think that's pretty selfish of you.
Okay. Let me go? Explain your situation. Ask Gabriella about herself. Who are you like without Jake? She didn't turn around at your question, but you knew she was listening. You know, what are you like when he's not involved? I can't imagine you acting like this all the time.
I act normal. People like you just bring the worst out of me.
You sincerely doubted that since the common denominator here seemed to be Jake. Even if he was the one bringing out the worst in her, you knew you couldn't say that out loud. Then, what is normal to you?
My normal is boring. Everything is predictable. I feel happier when he's around, that's all.
After a moment of tense silence, her head tilted towards you. It was brief, but you could almost spot a smile on her face.
But if you're going to pry, I like photography. Aside from taking pictures of Jake, it makes a moment live forever. And I want to see the world with him one day.
You watched her face quickly switch back to blank as she approached
I
you.
wish Jake would stop fighting fate.
In her hand was an old kitchen knife. It was covered in rust and had most likely been put down here years ago. Please, don't do this. Your voice came out weaker than intended. It was a desperate attempt to make her reconsider.
I'm afraid it's a little too late for begging.
Please. Her grip on the knife adjusted and the look in her eyes was chilling. You squeezed your eyes shut, feeling terrified tears threaten to spill over. The metal touched your neck again. The pain lasted only a second before. Nothing. Ending 1 of 5. Game over. Thanks for playing. Okay, let's see. Let's do look for a bathroom. First things first, where were you going to piss if need be? You tried your best to sit up and look around, but it proved to be pretty difficult with your hands behind your back. After a moment of struggle, you used all the strength in your abs to sit up properly. Your eyes scanned the room for any door that could lead to a bathroom, but you came up empty. There was a creaky staircase off in the corner, but you couldn't see the door upstairs from this angle. There was also a window shining light into the room. You couldn't possibly pee outside without escaping, though. Other than that, there were a few boxes and cleaning supplies. Maybe you could use a bucket. Wow, you were so desperate that you were resorting to a piss bucket. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Great. Floorboards. Skip. Stare. You couldn't muster up any kind of reaction besides bewilderment. You stared up at her with wide eyes, your body completely frozen in place. Upon seeing your lack of response, the girl let out a sigh.
Oh, well, that's no fun.
She knelt down in front of you, reached for you, causing you to flinch back. No amount of self-preservation could avoid her in this situation, though. Let me go. Distractor. Going to sit silently. You had no words to say, especially not to the woman who had kidnapped you beside a bus stop. Everything hurt and your skin was crawling with the need to get out of here. How slowly was she going to kill you? Torture seemed so extreme, and you never expected that to be how you met your end. Maybe you imagined dying peacefully in your sleep after many long years of work and building a family. Even a freak accident where you got hit by the bus would have been more merciful than this. You didn't want to die here, but your wants were for naught in this scenario. She had all the cards, and you simply had to play the game. A rigged game where you had no choice but to lose.
I'm getting really tired of this.
She turned and began to walk towards you, making your heart skip a beat. You had no idea what she had planned for you now.
I wish Jake would stop fighting fate.
Try to break free. You sucked in a deep breath and yanked your hands away from each other with all the strength you could muster. Predictably, nothing happened. You didn't have the upper body strength necessary to break the rope. Gabriella looked at you with pitiful judgment.
Oh, nice try.
Her grip on the knife adjusted, and the look in her eyes was chilling. The metal touched your neck again. The pain lasted only a second before... nothing. Ending 1 of 5. Thanks for playing. Let's try... Start. Skip. Look for the bathroom. Skip. Try to fight. You thrashed your body as aggressively as possible and tried your hardest to get away. You didn't expect to get far with your limbs bound, but it was the intention that mattered. It was just to prove a point.
Oh, well, that's no fun.
Rip the tape off. Let me go. Distract her. Try to untie your hands. With her eyes off you temporarily, you took the chance life provided. Who knew how long she would be turned around, but you hoped it would be long enough to work at the knots tying your wrist. Your eyes were fixed on Gabriella for any indication that she would move, while your hands bent and twisted to get a grip on the rope. The friction against your skin irritated your wrist, but you couldn't let that sway you. Without a good view of the knot, it was tricky to even conceptualize a way to free yourself. Slipping your hands through the rope ended up being a better solution. You grit your teeth and keep quiet as you pulled your hands away from each other over and over again. It was just starting to loosen when you heard Gabriella click her teeth. She turned and began to walk towards you, effectively freezing you in place. If she had been talking to you, you had no idea.
I wish Jake would stop fighting fate.
Jake and fate. Try the knot again. You already did some work to loosen the rope around your wrists. Now it was a matter of getting them fully off. You wiggled your hands against each other, using the sweat on your skin to your advantage. Buying yourself a few more seconds would be vital. Of course, I have some last words.
Spit it out.
She was still toying with the knife, but her swing could slice you at any moment. This would have to be flawless. You pried your fingers from the first wrap of rope, speaking just loud enough to keep her attention on your face. It's just that You deliberately looked towards the stairs with a wide-eyed look of surprise. If only you were an actor, because any audience would be convinced someone just entered into the basement. Gabriella took the bait as her heart seemed to drop and her head whipped around. Now was your chance. In an instant, you slid your hands from the rope and grabbed Gabriella's wrist tightly. This snapped her back to reality, and a murderous glint appeared in her eye.
How did you?
You couldn't think about the pain of your wrist being rubbed raw, not if you wanted to get out of this alive. Using all your strength, you twisted a knife away from you and used your free hand to punch Gabriella square in the throat. She let out a grunt of pain as she fell backwards onto the ground, dropping the knife. Your breath was heavy, and you were hyper-aware of your thundering heartbeat. This was it. While she was gasping for air, you had to act. I wanted to see what happened if, when we were defending ourselves and wrestling with her, what if we just let the time slip away? There was no time to think. Flipping yourself onto your stomach, you reached for the knife Gabriella had dropped. Your hand slammed down onto the handle, and you wrapped your fingers around it like your life depended on it. In this case, it did. Just as you heard Gabriella begin to regain control of her body, you jumped across the floor towards her. You couldn't allow yourself to give her any leeway in this fight. You pinned her down with your body weight, but her own strength made it difficult to gain control. Her nails clawed at you, and she grit her teeth, trying to keep the knife away from her.
Damn it! I knew I was taking it too. Easy on you. I should have sawed off your limbs.
Every movement of hers tried to flip you over or just get you off, but you wouldn't budge. This had to end here or she'd end you. Her hand shot out suddenly and grabbed the back of your neck. A split second later, her forehead crashed into yours, effectively disorienting you. Within that window of time, she pried the knife from your fingers and pushed you back. You let out a gasp as your back met concrete once again. The tables had turned as Gabriella had the advantage once again. You were outmatched. You had no time to react before the knife came towards your throat. The last thing you heard was her maniacal laughter before nothing. Ending 1 of 5. Game over. Thanks for playing. Okay, now load up. Look for an escape. Although your ankles were tied together, you could still hobble your way to an exit if you moved fast enough. Sort of crawling on all fours ended up being the most plausible option available. It was a weird hop using your back legs while your arms provided the needed stability. You had to sidestep your assailant before looking for a solid way out of here. There wasn't much time until she acted though, so you needed to be quick. Let's go out the window. You had to take a risk on the high window. If it opened enough for a person to fit through, it was easily the fastest way out of here. Slowly but gradually, you crawled your way over to the window. Staring up at it made this task seem much more intimidating. Not only did you have to crawl out of a high window, but you had to do it with your legs tied up. A small box was shoved against the wall in front of it. Maybe you could use that as a step stool. The execution could have been smoother, but you pulled the box closer to your goal. It made your destination easier to reach. Your arms helped immensely as you climbed on top of the box. It felt like clawing your way to victory. A hole had been dug into the dirt outside to add the basement window, meaning you also had to crawl out of the window well. You popped the latch open that held the window shut and used all your remaining strength to slide. The window was janky as it slid open, mostly from years without use. It had moved about halfway when you heard a creak. Turning your head quickly, you were met with Gabriella a few steps away. In her hand was the rusty knife, and it was gripped so tightly that you could see her veins.
You're a fighter. I'll give you that much.
It was said with such condescension that you knew you were in danger. She moved closer, and you had no choice but to enter panic mode. Your hands gripped onto the windowsill for dear life, and you began to kick. The first kick knocked her back by her shoulder, which was a small relief. Using both legs meant you took longer to charge up the next kick though, so she slashed at you at the same time your legs lifted. The blade sliced your calf, making you hiss in pain. However, it also hit the rope. This loosened the knot enough for your legs to move somewhat independently. Things were finally turning around. You aimed your next blow at her face and hoped it would stun her long enough for you to make a break for it. She stumbled backwards and clutched her nose as it began to bleed. The blood looked weird though. It had an almost iridescent quality. You had no time to stare though. instead yanking the window open with all your might. Fresh air blew into the room like a lifeline. You wasted no time hoisting yourself onto the windowsill.
Fuck!
Gabriella made a lunge for you, but you were too high up for it to make a difference. You swung your legs out of reach and slipped through the window. A small hole in the earth had been dug out for the window, so you lifted yourself out of that too and crawled across the grass. You were free. It was a painful journey as blood dripped behind you, but you had done it. Once you could find a phone to borrow, the police would surely come after her and hopefully send you to a hospital. Even with a few scratches, you had successfully escaped. The house you had been trapped inside was in the middle of nowhere with nothing but empty streets and fields of grass. Your saving grace ended up being a small gas station a few miles away. Time went by so quickly as you were whisked away by an ambulance and admitted to the hospital. Law enforcement made a quick appearance when you informed nurses of Gabriella, who then sent units to the area you described. When they searched the house, no evidence of the crime was found, nor the lady in question. The house wasn't in her name either, instead belonging to a man in his late 20s. He was brought in for questioning, but he had never met a blue-haired woman named Gabriella. Apparently the house belonged to his late father, and he was debating whether to sell or remodel the home. He had no idea how long she'd been living there. Swabbing for fingerprints came back with no results either. You knew she didn't use gloves though. Maybe that psycho burned off her fingertips. How did she get away that fast? Where had she run off to? Even if she was never brought to justice, you hoped karma would come back to bite her in the ass one of these days. You had been given a new lease on life and weren't going to waste it. Ending 3 of 5, cheated fate. Thanks for playing. Let's do look for an escape, and then go up the stairs. Climbing a set of stairs might be difficult with your legs out of commission, but you needed to try. Slowly but gradually, you made your way over to the staircase. It most likely led up to the main house, which you hoped was empty at this time. Once you made it to the bottom step, you could see up to the closed door. There's no way she locked it and trapped herself down here too. Your arms helped immensely as you rose higher and higher. It felt like clawing your way to victory. A few steps away and you heard a creak. Turning your head slowly, you were met with Gabriella at the bottom of the staircase. Her brown eyes were a shade darker than normal. In her hand was the rusty knife, and it was gripped so tightly that you could see her veins.
You're a fighter. I'll give you that much.
It was said with such condescension that you knew you were in danger. Quick, drop kick her down the stairs! Get the high ground! Spinning back around quickly, you reached for the handle in a desperate attempt. You twisted as hard as you could, but it didn't open. That psycho had actually locked the door.
No key.
Her voice was right beside your ear. Any scream you were about to let out was cut off as you felt a searing pain in your back. You slumped over as the pain returned on repeat. The sounds of stabbing echoed in the stairwell. The pain was the last thing you remembered before it slowly faded to nothing. Ending 1 of 5. Game over. Thanks for playing. Okay, what happens if we miss the quick time event? Look for an escape. Skip. A stinging blow to the back of your head pulled you from your concentration. You staggered backwards, touching the injury carefully. You felt blood. When you turned around again, Gabriella was standing in front of you, a brick in her hand. Another one was lying on the ground next to you from her throwing it at you.
You fucking asshole!
She jumped at you, which sent you both crashing to the ground. You tried to block with your arms, but she was relentless in her assault. The brick left bruises all over your skin that ached. Every hit sent your mind rattling, and your body grew weaker. The blows kept coming endlessly, a consistent onslaught of pain. Then a slow, gradual fade into nothing. Ending 1 of 5. Game over. Okay. Let's see if we did it. Stare. Let me go. Distract. Sit silently. There we go. This is what I wanted to see. Nothing I could say would matter. Gabriella tilted her head, eyes still trained on your face. Whatever she found in your expression was enough to satisfy her. A small grin grew on her face, like she had come to a conclusion you weren't privy to.
Wouldn't matter? You're just accepting it? Accepting your death?
When she put it like that, it did sound kind of depressing. What other option did you have, though? At least you could make peace with yourself at the end of your life. Do I have a choice?
No. No, you don't.
The knife was waved around before being unexpectedly tossed to the
But
side.
I do. Your life is in my hands to do what I please with, and you'll just accept it, won't you?
Confusion was all you felt as you stared up at her.
That's a good attitude. I'll have you know, I thought you were a spineless, selfish, little hitch in my plans, but I'm having second thoughts. You know more than you're letting on. You could be of good use to us.
Wait, us?
Of course. You don't think I could do all these modifications myself, do you?
Beneath her pale skin was a faint pink glow. It was horrifying to witness in person. It was like seeing a human glow stick.
You'll be the next cog in our big machine. I'm sure I can have them erase Jake from your memories entirely. That'll get rid of any issues the two of us might run into. I appreciate your willingness to course correct.
What? You were left wondering as she stood again and pulled out her sparkly yellow cell phone. She made quick work of pulling up a recent contact and hitting the call button. It must have finished ringing because a devious smile spread across her cheeks.
Hi, it's me. I think I found the perfect subject for you. Nice and obedient. We can work out all the little kinks later, but... Oh, no. Not too banged up.
She was working with someone else? How deep did this go?
Uh-huh. Yep, I know. But the tech should have no issue latching on. Yep, same spot. Thanks, Holden. You're a lifesaver. See you in a few.
She hung up the phone and turned back to you with a smile.
It's time for you to start over. Maybe after they fixed you all up and removed those pesky memories of yours. The two of us could be friends.
What the hell are you? Your words were cut off as a loud honk came from outside. If that was the person on the other line, who you assume was Holden, he had wasted no time getting there. She let out an excited squeal and came closer. Rather than sit pretty and chat like she had been, she grabbed onto your feet and began to drag you closer to the stairs. You were left with no time to fight back or question her.
Come on now. It's time for you to meet some new friends.
Without putting up much of a fight, you were thrown into the trunk of an old van. The drive was bumpy and tossed you this way and that way. The destination was unknown, as was your imminent fate. The details became fuzzy, and every face that went by became a blur. Was that Gabriella? Who was Gabriella? Who were you? A sharp pain deep in your chest blossomed. You couldn't breathe. It spread to your fingertips and your senses were numbed. Where were you? What were you? You were alive. Who was walking past you? Nothing was clear. Something moved your hand. Was it you? Did you have control of yourself anymore? What did you want in life? Were you alive anymore? You were. You had to be. You were alive. Things were different, that was for sure. It was also better. You felt better. You were better. Stronger, smarter, more driven, more necessary. You had begun anew. You were alive. 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 Welcome back. Ending 5 of 5. New life. Thanks for playing. Now, even though I did get all 5 endings, I still have a few options that I wanted to see. So let's get those other 2 branches. What do you want me to say? Gabriella narrowed her eyes and lifted the old knife into view. Your breathing shortened when the cold metal touched your throat. The blade slid across your skin lightly. The tip of the knife made its way down your neck, then to your collarbone, then to your sternum.
How about your last words?
She twirled the knife around absent-mindedly, allowing you one last opportunity to speak. And then it's back to this branch item. If we had already gotten here, what happens if we try to break free? Okay, we just die. Ending 1. And the last one. Have you considered that I'm scared shitless? Gabriella narrowed her eyes and lifted the old knife into view. Your breathing shortened when the cold metal touched your throat. The blade slid across your skin lightly. The tip of the knife made its way down your neck, then to your collarbone, then to your sternum.
Since you want to be such a smartass, I think your last words will be enough.
She twirled the knife around absent-mindedly, allowing you one last opportunity to speak. And then it's the same 3. And that was rose-colored cover. Yanderes have always been a hit or miss for me, but I absolutely adore Gabriella. A part of me really wanted to see what Jake looks like to make Gabriella go this far, but I feel like appearance doesn't really matter. Jake was just a person who met Gabriella at a low point in her life, and gave her the affection and attention she desperately desired. I think if anyone had given Gabriella that positive attention, she would have latched onto them in the same way. It's kind of sad just how far she was willing to go to try to keep the attention of someone who didn't deserve it. But I can't feel too bad. Gabriella tortured and killed many innocent people, and that cannot be overlooked. I liked that there were so many different story branches. I was desperately searching for every ending, and seeing Gabriella's different reaction to different comments was super interesting. I loved the cute pink decorative aesthetic that made up the game's UI. Besides being cute, these extra details brought another level of cohesion to every part of the game, including the save slots. I also think the voice acting was amazing. Taylor Oda did a great job voice acting the range of emotions that Gabriella had, especially when she would get pissed or sounded unhinged. The game mainly takes place in the basement from an angle of us laying on the floor, but I thought it was really cool how the camera would move when we try to escape out the window or scoot away from Gabriella to sneak out of the basement. Overall, I found this game really fun. It had a lot of interesting elements. We didn't see much revolving around the people who helped Gabriella change into a cyborg, so maybe that opens up to a sequel game where we get to learn more about those characters and see what happens after we get taken to their base. I guess that's something that only time will tell. Speaking of which, look at the time. The sun will be up soon, which means it's my time to go. Remember to like and subscribe if you like my content, and leave a comment on what you thought about the game. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Remember, stay sharp and stay curious. Bye!